When Donald Trump begrudgingly handed back the keys to the White House early this year, there was a thought he might quietly fade into history. After all, in the wake of the deadly riots on Capitol Hill and his false claims the election was rigged, the polarising president's standing had taken a battering. But legendary reporter Bob Woodward, he broke the Watergate scandal that brought down President Nixon, says Trump is far from giving up. Woodward and his colleague Robert Costa have been investigating the chaotic last days of Trump's administration, and what they've discovered is frightening. Just how close Donald Trump took the United States and the world to a perilous reckoning.
Make America great again. Again. We made it great, now we gotta make it great again.
He's back, and former President Donald Trump has his eyes set on the 2024 election. He's gathering the faithful in campaign-style rallies and stepping up his war against the legitimacy of the Biden presidency.
And they want to go after me because they think a big mouth. I don't have a big mouth. You know what I have? I have a mouth that tells the truth.
Donald Trump still says the election he lost was stolen from him, and the true believers are behind him all the way.
The fake news media viciously did everything possible to deny our victory.
Legendary American reporter Bob Woodward of Watergate fame and the Washington Post's Robert Costa have spoken to the people in the room at the centre of the turmoil during the darkest moments of the dying days of the Trump presidency in their latest book, Peril. They say a Donald Trump comeback is a real possibility.
He not only might run again, but he has a shot at the nomination and perhaps the presidency again. And you can't look away from that reality.
It's all about Trump. It's all about himself. It's all about this effort to have a kind of restoration of the Trump presidency under the guise of the provably false claim that the election was stolen. The election was not stolen. Costa and I spent many hours looking at this. Is there evidence out there? We would have a responsibility, if we found it, to publish it. And it just is not there.
It's called The Big Lie.
Frankly, we did win this election.
And it started on election night last November, when Donald Trump blamed the loss on widespread vote rigging.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country.
It culminated in the deaths of 5 people when a mob of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol on January 6, the day the election results were to be certified. Woodward and Costa say, far from being a passive observer, President Trump was prepared to do almost anything to hold on to power.
And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
And it brought American democracy to its knees.
Jesus Christ, we invoke your name!
How close did America come to constitutional collapse on January 6?
It came far closer than we ever imagined when we began this reporting project. This was not just some idea in the air. The American government, the American system, American democracy was brought to the brink by President Trump trying to block Joe Biden, then the president-elect, from being certified as the victor. Steve Bannon, the controversial former strategist in President Trump's ear, telling him to have a reckoning, to kill the Biden presidency in the crib. We unearthed memos like conservative lawyer John Eastman pushing Vice President Pence to toss out electors on January 6th, to throw the election to the House of Representatives, This was a coordinated effort on the right, inside of Congress, inside of the White House, to try to stop Biden, and it came very close, and it included an insurrection.
We know there was fraud, traditional fraud that occurred. We know that dead people voted.
Little known academic and lawyer John Eastman was part of that coordinated effort.
If Mike Pence does the right thing, we win the election.
A member of President Trump's inner circle, he gave last-ditch, dubious legal advice to pressure Vice President Mike Pence to overturn the election. Bob, did you effectively catch the president trying to organise a coup d'etat?
Well, there's this memo that we found written by that conservative lawyer who was very close to Trump, who laid out really as a blueprint for a coup, an instruction manual to Vice President Pence to not follow the Constitution or the law, but to find a way to certify the election for Trump. It's being described in the United States as the roadmap for a coup d'etat.
When Pence ultimately rejected the plan and carried out his largely ceremonial duty and certified the election, all hell broke loose, and the enraged crowd began to chant, "Hang Mike Pence."
USA! USA!
Trump, through his actions, through screaming sessions, which we described in the Oval Office, his sense that the election had been stolen or was going to be stolen from him. And this was President Trump anxious to hold on to power, to pressure his vice president in a way that is inconceivable, or was at least inconceivable to us.
In those desperate and chaotic last days of the Trump presidency, alarm was spreading at the highest levels of US intelligence and defense that the president would lash out. And now we know how close it came to an all-out war.
The CIA director, a nonpartisan official at the highest ranks of the American government, Gina Haspel.
Mr. President.
And she says that during the transition, the United States was on the brink of a right-wing coup. The president was acting like a toddler with a tantrum. And she worried during the transition, especially in November and the weeks after the election, that the president could strike out, lash out at Iran because of his ego.
And it wasn't just Iran. Events were spiraling dangerously out of control. 2 weeks ago, at a congressional hearing, top US General Mark Milley confirmed fears of a potential military or even nuclear strike.
Speaker of the House Pelosi called me to inquire about the president's ability to launch nuclear weapons.
General Milley was receiving intelligence that China was genuinely worried about a possible US attack. It prompted an extraordinary call to his Chinese counterpart, General Li, to assure him it was not happening.
My task at that time was to de-escalate. My message again was consistent. Stay calm, steady, and de-escalate. We are not going to attack you.
This is the worst kind of hair-trigger environment for somebody in the military. Things can go off the rails. Miscommunications are the seeds of war, as we know. General Li was worried that the United States government was going to collapse. China had gone on alert. Russia had gone on alert. Iran had gone on alert. And the national security crisis intensified in a way as we did this reporting that we never expected to find. And then you go through and see the peril, the instability. I mean, as you well know, in Australia, the world counts on the stability of the United States. That is hopefully a given. This is a moment when it was in grave doubt.
This is unbelievable that the world came so close, Robert.
And it unfolded behind the scenes. That is what is stunning. This was not something playing out in the news, wasn't playing out in headlines. This was a crisis at the highest levels of the American military, trying to stave off some kind of nuclear disaster or miscommunication in the South China Sea that could spark a confrontation between global superpowers. And to have that kind of fear on the Chinese side, it's so almost surreal to think about, but it happened, and Milley had to confront that issue.
I mean, this is a guy that's right on the edge, and this is a country right on the edge. Bob, at the time when you were watching as an observer, did you feel as though Trump was in this that deep?
Trump is the center of this. So General Milley concludes that Trump is in a mental decline, and the book supports this when you see some of these scenes. This is not a president who is a stable operator. It is a president committed to all kinds of notions. The United States, and therefore the world, was dancing with calamity.
So, Robert, the first term was a warm-up act. What does the second term look like?
I voted for a man named Donald J. Trump. 'Cause when they're playing the anthem, I stand up.
Our movement is the greatest in American history, and it has just begun.
Former President Donald Trump is neither gone nor forgotten, and his sights are set on reclaiming power.
We will take back that glorious White House.
Donald J. Trump.
Authors Bob Woodward and Robert Costa investigated the momentous events following his election loss that brought American democracy to the brink. And all the indications are he's circling for another term.
Well, it's early. Polling now shows President Trump in the lead position to win the Republican nomination in 2024.
So, Robert, the first term was a warm-up act. What does the second term look like?
President Trump, when he came into office, was a total outsider. By the end of his term, President Trump had become fully comfortable with power and using power, because we saw him push around his vice president, work with lawyers to try to block the certification of an election. All of it is evidence of a man who knows the presidency can be weaponized for his own political gain, or at least tried to do so.
On that, Bob, Donald Trump is back, and who's going to stop him?
Well, this is the big question. And if you look at the polling in the United States, it's astonishing. There are people who still believe in him, who agree with him that the election was stolen, when there is no evidence other than Trump's personal, emotional declaration. It was stolen. I was cheated. You, his supporters, were cheated.
Spurred on by Donald Trump, Republicans are still haplessly searching for evidence of voter fraud.
This is an audit like we've never had before.
The latest attempt involves commissioning private audits of ballots. A county in Arizona was the first to be subjected to such a recount, and the results confirmed Joe Biden won.
Joe Biden won the 2020 election. Now, even a Republican-backed farcical recount in Maricopa County, Arizona, just reaffirmed the completely obvious.
But, incredibly, Donald Trump refused to even accept that result and shamelessly lied to his supporters at a rally 2 weeks ago.
Yesterday, we also got the results of the Arizona audit, which were so disgracefully reported by those people right back there in the headlines, claiming that Biden won. That Biden won are fake news and a very big lie. You know, they like to, you ever notice when they write about that, they would say, well, the election results are a big lie. Every reporter, it's just total misinformation. while they're totally unfounded, everything's unfounded, big lie, not correct, while Trump has no reason to say this, I mean, we get piles and piles of information, affidavits by the thousands and thousands. It's a disgrace.
Thank you to all my colleagues on this committee.
Congresswoman Liz Cheney is one of the few Republicans willing to stand up and call out Trump's lies about the election.
To preserve and protect the Constitution.
And what she says is his crusade against American democracy.
Today, we face a threat America has never seen before. A former president who provoked a violent attack on this Capitol in an effort to steal the election has resumed his aggressive effort to convince Americans that the election was stolen from him.
But Liz Cheney is in the minority. While some Republicans privately oppose Trump, his continued popularity means they remain too fearful to say so publicly.
She has challenged and criticized Trump. He's out there. He's going to campaign against her. There are lots of people who, quite frankly, tremble at the prospect of having Trump support somebody in a primary against them, or even tweet or publicly criticize them.
This is a country that's been under a stress test of American democracy for the past 5 years. Many Republicans told us during the course of reporting they still like President Trump, what he was able to achieve with the courts, with policy, but many of them also fear what his revival politically could do to the party, to the country. We're just going to stay on it, stay on the beat.
A second Trump presidency has implications not just for the United States, but for the world. The AUKUS defence agreement, tying Australia's security even more closely to the world's only democratic superpower, is no certainty under Donald Trump.
So a Trump election, for instance, in Australia, you've made this agreement on submarines, right? If Trump's reelected, he tears that up the minute he takes his hand off the Bible and says, oh yeah, by the way, there is no longer this agreement. So it's time for people to look and examine and weigh facts as best as possible. And so, this is where we are. We are at a time when all of a sudden Donald Trump could be there in the Oval Office again.
Hello, I'm Liz Hayes. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our extra minutes segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.